Hello, this is Niswander, and you're watching the Nowman Show. And today, we are continuing the discussion on building coalitions for our future. And I have a great panel with me right now, and we're going to get into the discussion right away. So first of all, I got a couple of questions to answer in a minute or less. The first question is, what is my name? What organization do I represent? A little bit of my background, and what's the mission of the organization? And I'll start right now. Maria? My name is Dan Niswander, and I am not only the host and producer, creator of the Nowman Show, but I come from a background in entertainment and education, particularly music and education finance. As the host of this show, education is one of the focuses of this show, and that's my activism, but I'm also representing Democracy at Work Pasadena, which is based out of Manhattan, that advocates for worker cooperatives. How'd I do? Oh. Okay, so I'll start here to my right.
My name is Dr. Asatar Bair. I teach economics at Riverside City College. And Niswander mentioned Richard Wolff. That was one of my advisors on my dissertation committee. So I'm very much focused on economic justice, and especially about class and class theory, worker cooperatives. That's really the focus of my professional work. I studied the economics of the prison system and the class structure of the prison system. I'm also active with our union, faculty union at RCC. And I'm also quite into personal development. I teach meditation because I think that the world that we're trying to create also has to begin within.
My name's David Feldman. I am an activist with United Teachers Los Angeles. My focus is really saving public education in LA. Right now, UTLA, we're focusing on getting more nurses, more teachers, lower class sizes, and really saving public education at a time when public education is under attack. The union is, right now, we are a very progressive union, and we're trying to really connect our struggle with the wider social justice struggle.
My name is Matthew Bair, and I have a graduate degree from the University of Massachusetts in labor relations and research. My focus is organizing Lyft and Uber drivers into unions and co-ops, and currently working with Rideshare Drivers United LA and People's Ride. Rideshare Drivers United LA is a union, and People's Ride is a rideshare, but organized business-wise as a co-op.
My name is Phoenix Goodman. I'm the co-founder of Public Bank Los Angeles. We are campaigning to create the nation's first municipal public bank. We want the Los Angeles Public Bank to be accountable to the people, fully transparent, and with a board of directors that includes community oversight as well as banking experts to create a banking service for the people, on behalf of the people, by the people. We'd also like to inspire cities and states across the entire United States to follow suit, to create their own public banks, and to fundamentally transform the economic system.
My name is Irene Montantes. I'm a news reporter with KPFK Radio. We're educating the community and raising awareness. It's a radio for the 99%. I'm also director of community outreach for Revolution LA, and Revolution LA started the Divest LA campaign that won, and we're currently working on Public Bank LA. I'm also board member of UPLA, Urban Partners Los Angeles. We are an organization working hands-on with children and families in Mid-City, helping them with food distribution. We help over 200 to 300 families every Saturday, and we are tutoring children to teach them English. Most of their parents are unable to tutor their children because they are working 2 jobs just to get by.
Fantastic. So now the second question is, in a minute or less, what is your personal passion? My personal passion is essentially education, and finding ways to communicate important messages to people. And I focus on this television show and also on worker cooperatives, which I think is the long-term solution for our economy and our society. And there's a lot of short-term solutions that I want to work on as well, including this coalition idea. But in the long run, we need to change the economy, and we need to own the economy again.
Well, I'm very focused on education, working with economic theory, but more broadly with how do you fundamentally transform the world? How do we understand events? How do we understand our own history? And connected to that is also how do we understand ourselves? Do we know who we are? How do we move deeper into greater self-knowledge and then bring that forward to, as Gandhi said, to be the change that we wish to see in the world?
So I've been a teacher for 15 years, and as a teacher, of course, my passion is also education, but and it's organizing people in defense of education. I think organizing people in the workplace, I think, is very important. I think it's an important place where a lot of people feel alienated, first of all, and it's for people to really realize their power. Outside of any kind of process, but people organizing themselves. That's really what I really am for, and I'm really passionate about contributing to my union, United Teachers Los Angeles, in such a way where we're a social justice union and we're a true organizing and fighting union. So that's my overall passion is to take the union from a service level to an organizing social justice level.
I guess my personal passion would be bringing about social change and helping the left get hegemony, creating collaborations all across different groups of people and uniting so we can bring about a better world. A lot of work I do is in labor and union work, and I'm passionate about workers' rights and justice on the job.
My personal passion is the evolution and transformation of all the systems of our society and transforming all of them into their most ideal outcomes. For example, public banking, which is what I'm focusing on now, I believe is the ideal banking system, given the fact that banks are needed. I'd also like to see the ideal government, education, economic system in general come to be, so that one day we can look back on today as a very unenlightened era and to bring about something that fully maximizes humanity's potential.
Being a mother of 2 boys and coming from, as an indigenous woman, coming from a family who's currently oppressed and who has had this long history of oppression, my passion is to help communities that are suffering and that are unable to stand up for themselves because they're just trying to get by every day. My passion is worked on through KPFK, through UPLA, and Revolution LA. I want future generations, my children's generation, to thrive, not just survive. That's what I'm fighting for them and for all future generations, all children of the future, and for families who are suffering.
Fantastic. So now we all know a little bit about each other, so we can begin an actual discussion. Before we actually get into that discussion in more detail, it looks to me like we're on the same page with creating collaborations, coalitions, money, economics, banks, worker cooperatives, education. That's a great place to start. So while we're thinking about that, let's watch this clip. Going back to 2011, something that is a huge part of history we should never forget about. I'm talking about Occupy Wall Street, and this is a clip from Occupy Los Angeles. Check it out, and we'll be right back in a minute.
You just keep doing it. It sends a real message, I think, that people are in the streets, because it's the only other way to get your voice heard if you don't play the game the way it's been played with lobbyists, congressmen who are too much influenced by lobbyists, corporate money that influences the politicians. This is really the only alternative, so don't let them convince you to come inside, put on a suit, and hire a lobbyist. That's how you lose. This is how you win. So my congratulations to you. All modern societies that work, I'm thinking of governments in Europe that function more smoothly than ours, that take care of their citizens, they're a hybrid of capitalism and socialism. Obviously, America is also. We are full of socialist entities in this country. Even the tea baggers don't want to get rid of Social Security. They want their Medicare. They want their farm subsidies. They want their mortgages through the government. The bankers, they certainly take more handouts than anybody. But it has to be done in a fair way, and it has to be done in a way that works for everybody.
I know we're streaming live right now, so I'm talking to folk right now who are not here. Folk who are not here right now, but know that they're catching hell. Know that they can't find a job. Know that they can't afford their student loans. Know that they're living back home with their mom and them. Know that they don't have access to health care, etc., etc., etc. If you have a legitimate grievance, this is where you need to be. And I'm convinced that if we keep making enough noise, somebody's got to start asking questions about what does matter to us. The worst thing you can do to a human being is to make him or her feel invisible, to make them feel disposable, to make them feel like they're a calculation or they are an afterthought. And there's too much of that in this country. The humanity of too many people is being contested every day. What we are fighting against is the contestation of the humanity of too many Americans of all races, colors, creeds, etc.
I saw the same thing in New York, Occupy Boston, as well as Occupy LA, that focuses on corporate greed. It talks about individual liberty, it talks about social justice, it talks about democratic accountability, especially the 1% who own 40% of the wealth.
All right, we're back with the panel, and opening it up right now, where do we begin to look for issues where we can create coalition? I know I mentioned education, banking, finance, worker cooperatives. Where do we begin? How do we bring people together to begin having real serious discussions? Because as most of us know, the so-called left is all over the place. And that's a problem because we are moving to the right in this country. And if you learn from history where education comes in, this isn't the first time this has happened. So what are your thoughts on that? What do we do? Is the short-term goal educating people, like what the DSA is doing? What are your thoughts on that?
I think, first and foremost, I think we're really starting with the economic system. I think where education starts is those of us who are activists really have to start talking about the C word, capitalism itself. And, because that is kind of the 10,000-pound gorilla in the room, where when you look at the ruling class politics, capitalism, the word is almost never said. It's
That's
kind
right.
of interesting when I talk to my high school students and I say, have you guys heard the word capitalism? And most of them have not, even though this is probably the most important word in their lives. And so I think as far as education goes, I think we really have to begin with the economic system itself. What do we do to change it, to make it more, maybe not make capitalism, maybe we need to go to a different system altogether and have a more democratic system.
Yeah, I think the key is, I was talking earlier to Phoenix about it's more fundamental even than a democratic society. It has to start with humanity and just moral issues, humans caring for each other. Just that's very simple, basic stuff. And then you can work into a collaborations and democracy and all this kind of stuff. So in the worker cooperative movement, we focus on democracy in the workplace, but really it starts with what they call co-op principles, which includes what you do in the community. right? Your visibility in the community, like, you know, you do media and you have children, so you're obviously very engaged in their lives, you know, and you're totally focused, you know, on the public banking system and how that influences our lives, and it's not Wall Street influence. And Matthew, I know you're labor and passionate about worker cooperatives and that, and David, in education and high school kids, you know, that are they're at that stage where they just absorb all this information that they're not getting, you know, from the usual sources. And likewise, you're doing the same thing on the university level as well, and with the economics, making it interesting, where people find that you know, economics affects every part of their lives. So suddenly this subject that seems so boring is something that actually has some depth and interest. So education, it would be my idea of where to start as a short-term solution. And of course, you know, one can go into, you know, universal basic income, you can talk about, you know, getting single-payer health care and all these different components, you know, in the meantime, to address people's needs fundamentally. I think that's what it is that we need to get back to understanding fundamental basic needs. Right. Half the country right now, according to, I think it's a CNN Money or a Consumer Views, I think one of those organizations did a survey, half the country is having a hard time with their basic necessities. This is a major crisis unfolding. So I think we should start with that. What do you think? Start with just helping people get their basic necessities and educating them as well.
When I think of education, I think of, you know, like creating a sense of possibility for people, and, you know, to get a sense that what we have now is the product of historical development. It does not need to be this way. You know, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we could structure society. Sometimes I get things kind of reversed, right? Like I'll see an episode of Star Trek or something, right? And I'll say like, hey, how much do you guys get paid? It's like, get paid? We don't, that's not what motivates us. We work for the benefit of humanity. And it's like, whoa, imagine if that was how we organize things, right? We work for the benefit of humanity. Imagine, is that, could we organize the economy so that actually becomes a realistic possibility, you know, instead of we work to survive, or we work because we're afraid that we will have utter deprivation if we don't, you know, or that if we don't get to education, then we'll be at the bottom of the income distribution and all of the difficulties that go with that. You'll lose your health care. Here we are being motivated by fear, by scarcity, and yet we have the most prosperous, richest economy, I'm talking about the global economy, ever, right? So why are we motivated by deprivation? Why are we motivated by scarcity?
That's very true, and you go back to the idea of capitalism and money. Like, what is that really? I mean, you know, we have the public banking system. Tell us a little bit, Phoenix and Irene, about Revolution LA and the Divest LA and the public banking stuff that's going on right now.
Well, Revolution LA is the umbrella organization, and Revolution LA launches the various campaigns. The first campaign that made major headway was Divest LA, which identified that the city of Los Angeles was banking with Wells Fargo primarily, and because of all the acts, the unethical investments, the fraud, the corruption, the Dakota Access Pipeline, the fraudulent bank accounts, we decided we didn't want public funds to support that institution. So Divest LA lobbied to get City Hall essentially to vote against renewing the contract with Wells Fargo. But in that process, what we found was that to simply move from one big bank to another big bank would be a symbolic shift and an important first one. But if you left it at that, it was still going to be with another bank guilty of the same crimes. So this is when we realized that the final end goal of divestment is public banking by definition, because it wasn't going to be a credit union, it wasn't going to be a community bank. They were too small to handle the account. Only a bank built to be transparent and accountable to the people would be the final end game of the banking movement.
And our vision is to help several communities, to help with housing, to help with green energy, to help indigenous communities, undocumented communities. This bank would help every community. It would solve so many of Los Angeles problems. And then if all cities in the states would follow this, we can change a lot. We could bring down Wall Street.
That's right. You're absolutely right, because it has to operate outside of the Wall Street model.
Exactly.
Right? And we've seen already in North Dakota that people like their public banks there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? More people can get access to loans, which is what they're supposed to be, one of the things they're supposed to be in business for, right? So when you have a successful entity like that, where people actually want to put their savings into it because they see the benefits that come out to the community.
It's a very intersectional movement,
Yeah.
because everything in our society requires money, in our economy, at least. And so the types of businesses that exist because they originally got some kind of a loan from the banks, or
Exactly.
right? So by going to the very heartbeat of the entire circulatory system of the economy, by changing where the money originates, then you can have far-reaching ripple effects into the rest of society as well, so long as you make those public banks, you construct them in a way that they are bound by social and environmental good. I want to answer your question, though, that ties exactly with that, though, which is what you had asked earlier about how the left is all over the place and what can we do. It's my very strong opinion that the left is where it is because there is a tendency in their well-intentioned hearts to notice and become educated about the problems in our society, but a lot of the times it gets a little bit too abstract from there. And one example of what public banking is it takes what was an education about the evils of banking itself, which 2011's Occupy was a testament to, but then it takes that unclear abstraction and it brings it down into a specific policy change that specifically can be legislated on, that can be voted on, that can be defined by a charter. And all the problems in our society, whether it's banking or other types of tax laws or other types of land laws, people need to identify the specific legislative changes and then learn how to power map government and to take control of government in a way to make it represent the people through those laws. That's how the change goes from us being all over the place to getting the things actually done.
That's fantastic. I mean, the wheels are already turning in my brain about how I can end this episode today, because there are ways to connect the dots, even with us sitting here in this room right now, and you watching out there as well. Matthew is we met obviously through the worker cooperative movement and
Democracy at Work.
Democracy at Work, which Richard Wolff inspired me a great deal to think about how a different world is possible when you do business in your community. I've worked in corporate America, and there's the good and the bad. There was even an ESOP, which, employee stock option program, which is often called a cooperative, but we know that that's not a worker cooperative. And in a worker cooperative, one person, one share, one vote. Not, you don't have this massive inequality that's been created. And when we come back, we're going to get into some more details about how I see this coming together, and then make some proposals on how we can actually work together on some projects going forward in reality. So recently, the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives National Conference took place here in Los Angeles at Los Angeles Trade Tech College. And there were people from all over the country there. Matt was there. And got some great interviews, and you're going to see a clip here in just a second with Kali Akuno, who is co-author of a book called Jackson Rising and founder of Cooperation Jackson. And there's a lot of exciting stuff going on there right now where he tells me basically in this interview that we're not just creating worker cooperatives, we're wanting to take over the economy of Jackson. So we'll be right back in a second. Here is Kali Akuno from Cooperation Jackson, recently at LA Trade Tech. So this is Niswander. I'm here at the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops National Conference, taking place this year at the LA Trade Tech College. I'm here with Kali Akuno from Cooperation Jackson.
There may be a good number of you in the audience who know me. I'm originally from Los Angeles, born and primarily raised here. We are very intentional and deliberate at every stage in our work of reaching out to folks all over the country to share our particular experience and to really try to politicize the movement.
That's right.
Because we think that there is a fairly vibrant cooperative movement that actually exists in this country.
Yes.
But I think a lot of it is falling into this notion that, business is supposed to be a neutral kind of activity, and you don't get involved in politics. And we're here to say, no, we have to take a partisan position, and we have to, if we're going to orient these businesses and not have them become just new vehicles of capital accumulation, and they're actually really going to serve working people, then they have to have a working class orientation and working class politics. So that's a particular thing that Cooperation Jackson has been trying to add to the movement as we grow and struggle. And one of the things we always say, people is like, well, what can we do to best help you? And the thing, at the end of the day, we need a strong cooperative movement, a radical movement here in Los Angeles.
I totally agree.
That would give us ultimately the most support, because we can't exist in like a small little progressive isolated bubble. It's too easy to kind of hem in, constrain, and ultimately eliminate if there's no other forces that we can relate to, do business with, and are really pushing for another way of doing business and another way of organizing the world.
Well, how about you and I try to find a way to create a coalition between Jackson and Los Angeles?
Done.
Because we're going to talk about this on the show in the studio. We're next in the studio. So this is going to be a clip you're going to watch right here. We want to do this in actual reality, not just talk about it. All right. So can we take over the economy here in Los Angeles? Matt, what do you think about that?
It's a good question. I think that in going back to your earlier question is like, what do we need to do to make change, and is education a part of that? And like, I would just would want to say straight out, I don't think actually education is the most important aspect of it. I think that there is multiple things. I think there's a lot of things that need to be done, but education is one of the important things.
But how can you connect it to make it easier for, let's say, people to understand?
What to understand?
Creating a coalition of all these different issues.
So I think that if you're looking at, when I think about building coalitions and political work, I refer a lot to Antonio Gramsci. And Antonio Gramsci was a leader of the Communist Party in Italy back in World War I and World War II. And he gave a lot of thought on why there wasn't a revolution that occurred in Europe, but it happened in Russia. And some of the key components that he talks about are, and I think is really important, is just like the one thing, if you want to see the left make some change and to gain hegemony, one of the big terms that he uses. Then two, the other term is historic bloc. And this historic bloc needs to be set up, and it's something that has to be done on a conscious effort, something that we're working towards. And it's because the left that doesn't have that historic bloc that they don't have hegemony, they don't have power. And the right does a really great job. I mean, Trump is an example of it, a really great job.
They're very successful.
Building that historic bloc and hegemony. So, and I was having this conversation just to make the point of the education, because I love education. I think education is really important, but it's not the only thing, because there's all these parts, these collaborations of churches and unions and different institutions, and then that to get that historic bloc, we'll be able to we'll have those collaborations in a way that we need. We'll be able to do all the things that we are always talking about, and doing something about the homelessness situation, actually, and then doing something about poverty. And we'll have hegemony to be able to do that.
So you feel it's political? Does everybody feel that we really have to politicize what we know and the information that we share with others to educate them.
It's a different type of political, though. It's not directly like this understanding of electoral politics.
Yes.
I think that could be part of it, but it's a very within Antonio Gramsci is that there needs to be cultural change. This cultural
Right.
political realm needs to happen, and the education aspect is that yes, the education is important, and it's called building class consciousness, but that class consciousness doesn't mean that just someone it gets a bad rep. I mean, a lot of people when the left use it, they think that they're calling rural people stupid, but it's that they have a different consciousness, and this different consciousness is brought by education. But the thing is, look at what Trump did. He talked about TPP. He went to coal miners, right?
He did. He went to West Virginia. He went to Pennsylvania.
And
he went to Wisconsin. I mean, and I'm from Middle America, and I know, and definitely in Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, those people were ready to vote for Bernie Sanders,
right.
Not Donald Trump.
Right.
But when that was taken away from them, there was no way they were going to vote for the creators or anybody associated with the creators of NAFTA, the bad, really, trade agreement. So it's understanding political strategies and how those work too. We have about 5.5 minutes or so. How can we work together? I see education, I see the economy, banking, money, building business models, and we all know in the worker cooperative movement that it literally is a political movement, not just an alternative to business models. So there's obviously a lot of information here. There's media as well with KPFK. We can create coalitions here.
Yeah, absolutely.
With media, with education, with the finance community, thinking, the people that are progressive thinkers. What do you think? What can we do? Maybe public events where we all can have tables and speak. And
I think unity is really important. I think the right has done a really great job at dividing us by the color of our skin,
yes,
and by the religion that we are.
Yep.
And there's so much there's so much that has divided us, and they've done a really great job at that. I covered 6 weeks of the Poor People's Campaign, actually went out to Sacramento and to Washington. And what I noticed that I thought was really beautiful and powerful was all these religious people coming together, Christians, Catholics, Jews, every color was there. Yes, Muslims, there was Black communities there, white communities there was indigenous groups there. They were all coming together and fighting for all of their rights. And we had a set of demands. I helped write the demands, and the demands were for every community. And it was unity, and it was beautiful, and everybody, you just felt this powerful movement of everybody coming together for one cause, and that is the 99%. Unity is so important, to stop thinking of each other as so different. We have to come together, and that's really, really important, to forget about our religion, forget about the color of our skin, and just unify together. That's extremely important.
And sometimes, the right is very good at dividing people, but sometimes I see a lot of division just on the left itself.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And even, every May 1st here in Los Angeles, I march with, with my comrades, and there's a bunch of different groups doing a bunch of different marches. I would like to see more unity on the left and kind of get over these kind of differences that we have, or democratic socialists or socialists. It's really in our interest as a social justice movement to really work together, because I think when we work together, I think we appeal to more people, and I think when we appeal to more people, people join organizations. And I think that's a big difference between the United States and other countries, is people are kind of depoliticized here, where in some, where people were members of organizations, I think other than just straight out education and teaching them, people learn when they do things, when they march, when they participate.
And be engaged. And let's wrap this up. I want to say real quick, what do you think about the Poor People's Campaign as issues to start on? Which basically, if you look at the 1968 version, which we can bring the educational component in, you have anti-racism, anti-war, and anti-poverty, based under the economic title, Poor People's Campaign. Right. Fast forward to the 2018 version, same three issues, add environmental justice. That's my thinking.
Where's the
issues.
economic aspect in that? That's, I mean,
Poor
poverty.
people's campaign,
like,
and poverty.
how about
That's but
worker
see
co-ops
that's
in
where you
that?
bring it in.
I'm just wondering.
Then
I'm
you
not
can bring
familiar
in
with
public
the
banks, worker cooperatives,
They're at the beginning.
educational system, media.
worker co-ops.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, I'd like to make a very specific plea to anybody
Yes.
that has resonated with the idea of public banking, because it is so intersectional with so many other things in
Yes.
our society. We have a specific ballot measure right now called Charter Amendment B. It's on the ballot in November 6th in Los Angeles City. If you are a voter in Los Angeles City, please vote yes on Charter Amendment B, and if it resonates with you, share about it, tell people you know about it, and get people you know to vote yes on B, because this is a very specific action step that can have far-reaching effects.
I think that people need to go into the community and get people talking about these concepts, and so that they are something that is natural. It's something that when you bring it up and you say that there should be, I don't know, $20 an hour should be natural, so you can actually take care of yourself in LA. Heck, 15, but getting into the ground and talking to people and just right on the ground. So they're bringing up these subjects themselves, and then when they hear it, they say, "Oh, well, yeah, I heard about that too."
Well, I think you start with what is hot now, right? I mean, like Bernie made the $15 an hour movement happen, you know, and California did that, right? New York did that. These states, you know, even without winning the primary, Bernie had this huge influence. So, okay, let's start with that. Let's have a livable wage for people. Well, what about having everybody have a job? You know, that's an idea that's gaining some traction now. But not just a job, what kind of job, right? Should it be a job where you produce the profits for somebody else who then becomes a billionaire? Or is it a job where you share the profits and collectively decide what happens to it for the benefit of all?
The greater
so
good.
I think you start with something that has traction for people. You know, if it's just like, hey, let's get a livable wage, then you start with that. You know, bringing in the funding piece, and I very much appreciate knowing about what's on the ballot. You know, banks have a history of redlining. They have a history of denying capital to poor communities, and you know, this has an impact on when workers try to get together and create their own enterprise. They often cannot get funded. So, you know, there's a thing here about getting that sense of possibility and then taking action in a specific way. You know, we don't want to just stay in the realm of possibility all the time. We want to be practical and move forward, whether it's organizing, whether it's working to create different institutions, raise awareness. You know, these are all pieces of the puzzle.
Fantastic. Let's go forward creating media on these different topics, for one thing. And maybe we can even, in the process of doing that, talk about creating events where we can have tables and actually engage with people. What do you think?
Absolutely.
That'd be great.
So let's think about that one. We'll get this episode out on the airwaves first. This is Niswander. Thank you very much. Great panel. Thank you so much for being on the Nowman Show. And as always, stay present in the moment now.
The past is gone, the future is yet to come, it's now, right now. The present is here, the future is near, but it's right now, you know. Being with you makes the body complete, so keep the body moving, and show your happy feet. At the end of the night, when all is said and done, I wanna know I did the right thing, and had a lot of